For the latest political developments in Liberia, we are joined by my colleague James Butty, managing editor of VOA's Daybreak Africa radio program, who recently covered the presidential runoff from the capital, Monrovia. Good afternoon, James.
Thank you very much, Shaka, and thank you once again for inviting me to be on your show.
It's a pleasure to have you back, of course, on Straight Talk Africa, especially when you just got back from Liberia. What was it like, really?
I think I can still hear the jubilation throughout the city and throughout Africa. As your piece just said, that democracy continued to be strengthened in Liberia. And I think it was former President Barack Obama who said that democracy is a messy situation, but however messy it is, I think it is strengthening in Liberia because of the peaceful transition that we are about to witness in Liberia with the election of soccer star George Weah.
What was the mood like when you interacted to your fellow countrymen, countrywomen?
Well, I think the people are very happy that George Weah won. Of course, in a contest, someone has to lose. The vice president of the ruling Unity Party lost. But the young people of Liberia particularly are happy because I think the people say they were voting for change. And they look up to George Weah as the embodiment of that change. So now it's up to George Weah to deliver on the promises, the hopes, and the aspirations of the young people of Liberia. I mean, before I left Liberia on the 31st or so, I traveled throughout the new year. People were rejoicing. They said they are holding a 21 days of celebration. That shows how this election is very, very important to the people, particularly the young people of Liberia.
Any particular reason why this particular runoff was not close at all? It was a huge landslide. You're talking about 15 counties, and you're talking about George Weah actually winning 14 out of those 15. Is that correct?
That's right. There are 15 political subdivisions in Liberia. George Weah won 14 of them. The only county that the outgoing vice president won was his Lofa County. Many things we can say that are responsible for that. As I said again, the young people see Weah as their hope and aspiration, the embodiment of their hope and aspiration. But also there was this implosion of the ruling Unity Party. That itself, you had almost a three-way division within the Unity Party. With that kind of division, there's no way the vice president could have won. There are many things that we can attribute to that, but this is the only thing I think was responsible, the implosion in the ruling Unity Party.
How does it feel like for someone like George Weah growing up from very, very humble beginnings? We're talking about slums, really. And at the end of the day, making it, in fact, essentially to State House, to the Executive Mansion in Monrovia.
I saw a piece about his soccer, when he played soccer in Europe, and I saw a very good piece they did of him. And it went back to his days as a young man growing up in Monrovia, a very poor neighborhood. And this is why many of the young people identify with him, because they feel he's part of them. He's part of them. He speaks the way they speak. And so, but they are looking up to him now to deliver at least something that is tangible that they can call a change. They voted for change, and they would like to see some semblance of change in him.
The expectations, of course, are overwhelming. How is he going to deliver? Do you think that he has a sort of magic wand? How is he going to do it, really?
I think in his in his acceptance speech, he made reference to the fact that Liberia's development partners were still needed. While they may have given some assistance to Liberia in the past, that assistance is still needed just for the time being until Liberia gets on its feet. He has also gone to appeal to, just 2 days ago, he met with the vice president, Joseph Boakai, to say that we may have had a contest, a democratic contest is over, I still look up to you as the senior person of this country. I would need you to help me deliver on my promises. And also, he's working hand in hand with outgoing President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. What many people are complaining about so far is that they think that George Weah must have his own imprint on his own government. That it cannot be 50-50. The outgoing government cannot appoint 50 members of the government and George Weah appoint. George Weah must have his print on the government if he is to deliver what the people want.
What kind of person is George Weah?
I met with George Weah. I think he's very personable. I met with him at his house when I did an interview with him on the day of the election. Very personable person. And he goes on. You have to know, if you're around George Weah, you will notice that just in a moment's time, he will start giving you some analogy that has to do with soccer. At one point, I'm talking to him, and he's talking to other people saying, comparing Messi and Ronaldo in terms of the positions they play. Very personable person. I think I was just laughing when he was talking, and I just joked with him to say, listen, maybe when I come back to Liberia next time, I will meet you on the soccer field to show you how well I can defend against you as a number 9.
You know, I met him one day here at the Voice of America with Ssali Young himself, and frankly, I couldn't understand how this man could be very, very simple. He's just simply nothing but humility. Where did he get that from? For a kid that grew up in the slums and suddenly is on top of the world, soccer, you know, probably, I mean, let's face it, probably one of the most famous individuals ever to touch the ball from the African continent.
I think he said, George Weah himself said that during his days as a soccer player, he did something good for the people, but he felt it was not enough. It wasn't enough. And so he returned, worked his way. The first 2 times in 2005, he did not win. 2011, somebody represented his party. He worked his way in the Senate. And so he is saying now, listen, if I'm going to deliver for my people, then I have to go on a higher level. And one of the things he told me, he said, James, how do you think I've managed to keep all these young people together? Because he said if things could have gone wrong, but he was able to keep them to the young people who support him during the confusion of the first round when all these legal challenges were happening. He said, I was able to hold down these young people not to cause any problem because we are almost to the promised land. And he said they listened to him. Well, they will continue to listen to George Weah. It's just that he has to now do something tangible that they can see as, that they can point to as improvement.
You know, in his victory speech, he talked about how he intends to create jobs. And he talked about, he also intends to fight against, of course, corruption. And yet, when you look at Liberia, your country largely depends on foreign aid. How is he going to go about that? Was he simply being a politician, talking the talk without necessarily being in a position to walk that particular talk?
That's one of the criticisms that people are now, as early as it is now, George Weah has not been sworn in. The inauguration is January 22nd this month. But people are saying that this country has a problem with corruption. George Weah himself said that he will welcome anybody who has meaningful suggestions, but he will not tolerate people who want to cheat the people. But if you're bringing back the same people in a government who people say were responsible for corrupt practices, then you will face criticism immediately. So already people are saying, you have to be careful, George Weah. Watch the people you are bringing around yourself in your government, because these people were responsible for stealing from the people, from the Liberian people.
Talk to me, James, and I hope this is the last question. When you look at the African continent, it looks like essentially, really, the trajectory of democracy seems to be working in favor of West Africa. we're talking about ECOWAS really countries. You seem to be, in fact, holding credible elections as compared to Central Africa or East Africa for that matter, and of course, North Africa itself. What is the secret behind that, really?
I think, you know, I was in Monrovia and I saw the ECOWAS delegation led by the former president of Ghana, Mahama, and also the African Union led by the former deputy chair, Mwencha. What I see in West Africa is the regional body able to put its foot down. Things could have gone astray in Liberia because of all the problems that were happening. But ECOWAS came in, Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the ECOWAS delegation came in and told the Liberian government or the Liberian people that you have to let the democratic process work, and we are going to make sure that it works. It is the regional body that must be together. It must have a unified position when you are dealing with problems like democracy. In East Africa, in Central Africa, this has to happen. The regional body must be strong. For example, in West Africa, they say, we are not going to tolerate this if you overthrow a government. That is the position of the African Union, but it has to be enforced. It has to be enforced. It has to be said that the term limit is a problem. You know, Shaka in Africa, term limit in your country recently, they changed, the president changed it, they changed the term limit. Now, 37 years or so, he is going to continue. If the people of Liberia were tired and wanted change after 12 years of the first female president, what about 37 years in Africa? 37 years for one country, for one leader. That is a lot. So people have to stand up and say, look, the limit, if you serve your country for 2 terms, let it be. This is why people are happy about Liberia today, because President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf served 2 terms. She's going out. Now we have a peaceful transition of government led by George Weah. That is something to look up to for other African countries. They can emulate that.
You have, of course, a peaceful democratic transition for the first time, remember, in 70 years, correct?
That's right, in 44 or so years. In Liberia, first time a peaceful transition that we are moving from one elected president to another. I think about 44 years or so.
I see. Well, James, thank you so much. And of course, congratulations, you and all the people of Liberia.
Thank you very much, Shaka.